The dimly lit dining hall of Belmont Manor buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. It was an exclusive country club where the wealthy mingled, discussing investments, vacations, and art. Tonight, the air carried an extra hum. Mrs. Eleanor Grant, one of the wealthiest patrons, was hosting a dinner party. Known for her sharp tongue and condescending nature, Eleanor reveled in being the center of attention, often at others' expense. The staff moved swiftly, ensuring every detail was perfect. Among them was Marcus, a young black waiter with a quiet demeanor but an undeniable presence. He had only been working at Belmont Manor for a few months, but had already earned a reputation for his diligence and politeness. His colleagues often noticed how Eleanor's sharp eyes lingered on him, though he always maintained his composure. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below. As the evening unfolded, Eleanor's laughter grew louder, fueled by glasses of expensive wine. She thrived on theatrics and often turned her gatherings into impromptu shows. Tonight, she decided Marcus would be her target. "Marcus!" Eleanor called, her voice cutting through the room. Conversations quieted as all eyes turned to him. Marcus approached the table calmly, his hands folded behind his back. "Yes, ma'am?" he replied with measured politeness. Eleanor's red-lipped smile widened as she leaned back in her chair. "Tell me, Marcus, do you sing? You look like the type who might have grown up singing in church. Am I right?" Marcus froze for a moment. He understood the undertone, the way she reduced him to a stereotype. But he held her gaze, his expression neutral. "A little, ma'am," he said finally, his voice steady. Her guests chuckled, some awkwardly, unsure of where this was going. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with mischief. "Well then, why don't you sing something for us? Something soulful." She emphasized the word, drawing out every syllable, her tone dripping with mockery. A wave of unease swept over the room. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up. Marcus looked around, sensing their silent complicity. His throat tightened, but his pride wouldn't allow him to shrink. "If that's what you wish, ma'am," he said, his voice calm but firm. Eleanor clapped her hands. "Wonderful! Everyone, silence! Marcus is about to give us a performance." The room fell still. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief moment, drawing a deep breath. He didn't just want to endure this moment, he wanted to own it. He thought of his late grandmother, who had taught him to sing, and of the songs she'd hum while cooking Sunday dinners. One in particular came to mind, a hymn she always said could bring light into any darkness. He began to sing. His voice was rich and full, the kind that seemed to wrap itself around every corner of the room. He sang Amazing Grace, his tone deep, resonant, and achingly beautiful. The mocking smirks at Eleanor's table melted into astonished stares. Conversations had ceased entirely, even the clinking of glasses stopped. His voice carried a weight that seemed to strip the room of its pretenses, exposing something raw and real. Tears welled in the eyes of several guests. The purity of his voice, coupled with the dignity in his posture, made it clear that this was no performance for their amusement. It was a testament to resilience, to grace in the face of humiliation. When the final note faded, the room was silent for several heartbeats. Then, unexpectedly, a lone pair of hands began clapping. It was one of the younger guests, a woman seated near the back. Slowly, others joined in, until the entire room was filled with applause. Some stood, their faces a mixture of admiration and shame. Eleanor sat frozen, her wine glass suspended midair. For the first time in memory, she seemed at a loss for words. Her attempt to belittle Marcus had backfired spectacularly, leaving her exposed as the small-minded woman she was. Marcus inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the applause without a hint of arrogance. He turned to Eleanor, his eyes meeting hers. "Is there anything else you need, ma'am?" he asked, his voice even. Eleanor's cheeks flushed, and she shook her head wordlessly. As Marcus walked away, several guests approached him, praising his talent and apologizing for what had transpired. One man, a renowned music producer, handed him a business card. "If you ever want to take your voice beyond this place, give me a call," he said earnestly. Marcus smiled politely, tucking the card into his pocket. But he wasn't thinking of fame or fortune at that moment. He was thinking of his grandmother, of her hymns, and of the power of grace. By the end of the night, Marcus left Belmont Manor with his dignity intact and a room full of people forever changed. Eleanor never mentioned the incident again, but the staff and guests would whisper about it for months, how a young waiter had turned humiliation into triumph with nothing but his voice and unwavering spirit. The weeks following the dinner party were strange for Belmont Manor Guests whispered about the night Marcus sang, while Eleanor, usually the loudest voice in the room, was uncharacteristically subdued. The event had stripped her of her commanding presence, and though she still attended the club, she rarely made eye contact with anyone, least of all Marcus. But for Marcus, life seemed to shift in ways he hadn't expected. The business card from the music producer remained in his pocket for days before he finally decided to call. The man, Jonathan Reed, had been serious about his offer. "Come by my studio," Jonathan had said. "Let's see what you've got beyond a hymn." Marcus, cautious by nature, hesitated. He had dreams once, big ones, but life's realities had pushed them aside. Still, something about that night had lit a spark. So one quiet afternoon, he walked into Jonathan's sleek, glass-walled studio downtown. "Sing what feels right," Jonathan said as he adjusted the microphone. Marcus chose "A Change Is Gonna Come" by Sam Cooke. The lyrics resonated deeply, a reflection of his own journey, and as he sang, he poured every ounce of himself into the performance. Jonathan sat back, arms crossed, watching with an intensity that made Marcus nervous. When the last note faded, the producer smiled. "You're not just talented, you're authentic. That's rare. If you're willing to work, we could turn this into something real." It was a leap, but Marcus agreed. Over the next few months, he balanced long shifts at Belmont Manor with late nights in the studio. Jonathan pushed him hard, refining his voice, guiding him through original songs, and helping him craft a sound that was both modern and deeply soulful. Meanwhile, word about Marcus's voice began to spread. Guests who had been at Eleanor's party returned to Belmont Manor hoping to catch a glimpse of the singing waiter. Some begged him to perform again, though he politely declined each time. He wasn't interested in being a spectacle, he was focused on building something meaningful. Eleanor, however, watched all of this with a growing unease. Her humiliation had become a legend at the club, and now Marcus, the man she'd tried to demean, was rising. Her attempts to undermine him, petty complaints to management, harsh critiques of his service, were met with indifference. Even the staff rallied around Marcus, protective of the man who had inspired them all that night. But the real twist came 6 months later. Jonathan called Marcus into his office, a triumphant look on his face. "You're not going to believe this," he said, sliding a paper across the desk. Marcus leaned forward and froze. It was a contract for a record deal. A major label had taken interest after hearing one of Marcus's demo tracks. "This could change everything," Jonathan said, his excitement contagious. Marcus signed the deal, and within weeks he was in the studio full-time. His first single, Rise Above, a powerful anthem about overcoming adversity, was released shortly after. The song exploded, climbing the charts faster than anyone had anticipated. Fans were drawn to his raw talent and his story, a waiter turned rising star. The success brought media attention, and soon Marcus found himself on talk shows and magazine covers. Inevitably, the story of the night at Belmont Manor resurfaced. Journalists pressed him for details, but Marcus remained gracious, never naming Eleanor outright. Eleanor, however, couldn't escape the fallout. Her name circulated in whispers, and her social circles grew colder. Invitations dwindled, and she found herself increasingly isolated. But what haunted her most was Marcus's success, a reminder of the dignity and talent she had tried to belittle. The climax came when Marcus performed at a high-profile charity gala, one attended by many of the same elite who frequented Belmont Manor. Eleanor sat in the audience, sinking low in her seat as Marcus took the stage. His performance brought the room to its feet, the applause thunderous. As Marcus thanked the crowd, his eyes briefly met Eleanor's. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded as if to say, "I've moved on. Have you?" That moment stayed with Eleanor. For the first time, she saw herself not as the powerful woman she believed she was, but as someone small and petty. It was humbling. As for Marcus, his journey was just beginning. His music became a beacon for others, a reminder that no matter the circumstances, dignity and talent could rise above hate. And though he left Belmont Manor behind, he often thought of that night, not with bitterness but with gratitude. It had been the start of everything.